About 5 years ago, shortly after I had finished my degree at Brown, one of my closest friends from college suffered a terrible loss. Her mother passed away. She was one of my very best friends, my very first friends at Brown. We had met in the hallway before our Hebrew placement exams. We had hit it off instantly, and she remains a dear friend to this day. So naturally, when I heard that her mother had passed, I planned to take off from work to travel from Boston, where I was living, to New York for the funeral and for Shiva. There's never a good time to support someone in mourning, but I was lucky in those years I was working in synagogues and Jewish day schools, settings that naturally understood my need to take time off and support my friend. In the day or so between hearing this tragic news and arriving in New York, a mutual friend, another friend, called and connected me to a few others who were still living in Providence at the time, who could use a ride down 95 to New York to be there to support our friend. Naturally, I was willing to pick them up. And friends rushing to do such a mitzvah, of course I'll go out a little bit out of my way and go pick them up on the way to New York. So the night I was heading to New York, I stopped in Providence and was waiting to meet those friends at my car, and I grabbed a slice of pizza. They were coming to meet me, and I finished up my slice. It was delicious. They called that they had arrived to the spot where we were meeting. Then I crossed the street to meet them, went to open my car, and realized I had locked myself out of the car. This was a nightmare. Immediately, my heart was racing. I was worried that we would be delayed hours, possibly not even make it for the next morning. The funeral was early in the morning. The same vehicle that was meant to facilitate me and others to support our friend was now locking us out, preventing us from going any further. Whether from a vehicle, a house, a room, most of us probably know the feeling of being locked out. It can be quite scary. For me, I tend to be a bit paranoid about having my keys on me at all times, but even still, the slightest relaxation of that diligence, or that neurosis if you prefer, can leave me locked out, unable to get where I need to be. This afternoon, we're coming closer and closer to the end of our day of fasting, and after Yizkor, we'll enter a part of the service called Ne'ilah. This is often translated as the closing of the gates. Gates are one of the images that we bring when we consider God's mercy and forgiveness. We imagine that the gates to tshuva, repentance, are open at Rosh Hashanah, and that at the end of Yom Kippur they are closed. Yet Ne'ilah most literally means locking. Not the closing of the gates, but the sealing of them shut, preventing further access. That's what got me thinking about being locked out. My first thoughts naturally drifted to the moments when being locked out was particularly scary, like this incident I just related with my friends, locked out of the car trying to get to a funeral. I won't leave you hanging. We were actually quite lucky that night. My car was parked at a corner near a gas station, and just as we were realizing that we are locked out, a service truck with a AAA sign on top of his carriage pulls into the gas station to fill up. We were able to convince the mechanic to help us, even though the AAA, when we had called, said it would be 3 or 4 hours. And luckily, we made it safely to New York in time that evening for the next morning. In this moment, as we near the end of our Day of Atonement, though, we're facing a sort of eternal lockout. The reality that all of us will die. I do not mean to imply anything about our belief or disbelief in a world to come, Olam Haba. I'll leave that to you to figure out for yourselves. But I refer to death as an eternal lockout because we can't know what exists on the other side. If our lives are the room, then death is the moment at which we no longer have the key to access it, to access those we love, those around us. So for as long as we live, we can never really know what it feels like in that moment. or what it is like to be locked out in that way. Yet on Yom Kippur, we rehearse our death. We play dead in so many ways, as we learned earlier this afternoon. We prepare ourselves for the inevitable. Each and every one of us will eventually pass through the door of life, to be locked out from the world of the living, of those around us. At this hour, then, this threat of lockout, of ne'ilah, is a warning. The gates of opportunity might be closing. The gates that lead to the paths that make our lives better might be closing. So what do? We plead to the Holy One, P'tach lanu sha'ar, open up the gate, b'sh'at ha'ne'ilah, in this hour of locking. Open for us the gate. The keys, in this case, lie within us. We imagine that we may, in fact, be locked out at this time of year, so we may search for the keys that improve our lives. Some are found within us, some might be found in the comfort of friends, family, and community. This year I pray that we all find those keys. I pray that for all of us sitting here, we are merely rehearsing the eternal lockout, that we all enjoy many years, good years, healthy years to come. And I pray that come this time next year, God will merely lock us out once again in an effort to cause us to turn inwards and find the key. Can you hear that song?